So we need to talk about Sudan, right? The genocide in Sudan. It's impressive how such a
Yes.
pervert genocide is inexistent in the press. I think it's shocking, Ileana, that nobody comments about Africa. Africa is invisible by all means, even if a genocide has been carried out. And I think the only justice we can do to these people is to tell their stories and to dismantle the US propaganda in this another genocide. No? But
Right.
what can you tell us about what is actually happening in Sudan if people knows nothing?
Yeah, okay. So I had to look this up too, because if you look at the headlines, I mean, actually, the latest headlines right now is talking about how the Quad mediators, US-led Quad mediators, have supposedly brokered a ceasefire in Sudan. The way that they're sort of framing it is like, well, actually, let me just show you some of these headlines before breaking it down. So essentially, they're sort of framing it like the U.S. is brokering this big peace ceasefire. You know, Trump ends another war. You know, like, oh my God, Trump is a peace president. This is all completely bullshit, as
Oh,
usual. As we can imagine, the US, of course, was instrumental in creating the conditions for this civil war. And it is a genocide. I would say it's a genocide, but it's from two factions that are, it's not about indigenous people or sovereign people fighting against an imperialist force. Unfortunately, it seems to be about two foreign-backed entities fighting, and of course, the people that are suffering are the
that's very
local people, yeah, in Sudan. So, but to break
So
it
it's like
down,
a two-front colonization. Can we put this way, a two-front colonization on
uh,
Sudan?
yeah, I mean, I guess you could, but it's like it is like a military and a resource grab from two factions that are actually, they're not opposing forces in the overall US empire, which is one of the reasons why people get very confused about what US empire is, because even within the infrastructure of the empire, there are factions that do have power struggles and fight it out for different reasons. And we'll go into that because I think it is important again to orientate this about colonialism previously and imperialism now, and why it's so important really for us to be talking about these issues and the propaganda and stuff like that, because
So
you
I
know
think you were hinting on divide and rule, the classic divide and rule, get the internal conflicts, make them, arm them, and let them fight.
well, yeah, I guess you're right. And then at the end of the day, you kind of still have backing from these foreign entities, but you don't, it becomes another thing. Like, it's not like one entity, the US empire, is just controlling these puppets for their own
Mhm.
specific, very efficient reason. You know what I mean? It's not really like that. And that's why we have to think about US empire in those terms, is that they're not that competent. It's just that they have so much
No.
money, right? And they have so much infrastructure and they have so much military that it's like inevitably they might reach their agenda, but through a very, very chaotic way. And that's basically what's happening here. Unfortunately, though, we're looking at massive amounts of casualties. I mean, casualties might be the wrong word here, but death. So it is a genocide. And I think one of the images that we had like over the week was the satellite imagery of the genocide that you could actually see from space. And it was just like so horrific. We can't actually even show it on here, but you can definitely look that up. But so I just want to break down the headlines of this supposed ceasefire so that we can sort of get on the same page and understand what's happening. It's being described as a humanitarian truce that has brokered by the US, like I'm saying. However, there's an issue with this because, first of all, it's just a humanitarian truce, not a real ceasefire. The SAF, which is the Sudan Armed Forces, supposedly would be, you would think would be the Sudan armed forces. So it would be theirs, and then the RSF. But like I said, the SAF is backed by foreign forces as well. So you have the RSF agreeing to this humanitarian truce, but this is after they have seized control of Al-Fashir city last week, which is the Sudan army's last stronghold. And reports are saying they have control of over a quarter of Sudan. So now they're agreeing to a humanitarian truce, which is, I suppose, like a pause. Like if we can think of Israel agreeing to pauses. There is no mutual agreement because the SAF has refused to endorse the ceasefire, meaning we don't know what the terms are, And then secondly, there's no enforcement mechanism. So how are we even going to know whether or not the ceasefire is in effect? And again, RSF is the entity that is being accused of the genocide. So again, they're deciding to stop. You know what I mean? It's a very nebulous peace deal. But of course, the humanitarian urgency is like there's already been estimated over 150,000 deaths since 2023, and 12 million to 20 million displaced since the war began in 2023.
It's an entire country. Yeah.
So it's absolutely horrific. Now, if we look at who the US-led Quad is, this is kind of interesting itself because the Quad is the United States, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. And so the Quad mediators are actually the people that are backing the RSF and the SAF, because Egypt is backing the SAF with military aid, strategic coordination, etc. The UAE is backing the RSF, again with arms, logistics, and financial backing. And Israel, which, as we know, is a colonial outpost of the US empire, Israel is backing the RSF with intelligence. So
Ileana, did I get it right that Israel is backing the RSF and the United States is backing the opposition SFA?
Well, it's not like that. No, it's not like that. It's like the USF is backed by Israel intelligence-wise, UAE with military-wise. Now, remember, Israel and UAE both, like UAE is a client state of the US. Israel is a colonial outpost of the US, right? So you're right. But just to clarify, the SAF is being backed by Egypt. Okay, so Egypt is also a client state of the US because Egypt is provided with $1.3 billion annually in military aid. That makes it like the top 3 recipients of military aid from the US. Okay, because remember, of course, Israel was forever the #1 recipient of military aid, but then Ukraine is up there with like 40 billion or something crazy. But really, Israel has been historically #1 military aid recipient from the US. Egypt,
another genocide from Israel that we don't hear about.
Well, it's not from Israel, it's from the US. I mean, I think this is what we have to be clear on.
Yeah.
Israel and the US. Israel is part of the US empire. So Israel is the military outpost in that region. The US pressured Sudan to sign onto the Abraham Accords. What is it called? I don't know where it is right now. The
Abraham.
Yeah, and in 2020, I think it's called that, and that normalized relations with Israel, and it caused Netanyahu to talk about the military. This area is kind of like their backyard or whatever it is. So it's essentially this Sudan is part of kind of the expansion of Israel. Like Israel is the expansionary force of the US empire in West Asia, in the Middle East. And so this is one of the countries. Sudan was also one of the 5 countries after 9/11 that was on the US radar. Libya, Syria, Sudan was also one of them, Iraq and Iran. right? So that's what we're talking about. Is you're right to say actually the U.S. is involved in all factions of this. They're laying the groundwork and the conditions for this type of horror to happen, another genocide by U.S. empire. But of course, the headlines aren't going to reflect that, right? And I have to say that just to sort of sum this up, because I was looking through the headlines and I couldn't really find anything, and then I found this article on Black Agenda Report. A Black Agenda Report is such a great, like, most people should know this outlet. It's they do great reporting on here, and this is where I learned a little bit more about the factions behind the forces on the ground in Sudan, with this reporter Musab Baba. And here you can see Sudan. You see Sudan is in such a logistically strategic place, right? Because there's Egypt, Iraq, Iran, but there, here, somewhere here that we can't see is Israel, Palestine, right? So Sudan is in this very strategic place. Here it also has gold mines. Like, let's not forget, it also has it has natural resources. So the gold, of course, UAE is after the gold. The RSF has control over gold mines as well. So it's resources and a geopolitically strategic position in this area. And then like I just wanted to say, so basically this, I'm just going to quote from this article at the end because it pretty much sums it all up. The Sudanese war serves as a tragic analogy. The nation has become a high-value commodity caught in a global auction where the SAF and RSF are merely the proxies bidding with foreign-supplied arms rather than independent political actors fighting for national interests. And that is the sad truth of this situation. Yeah, it's not about anyone here fighting for national interests. The people of Sudan are suffering because of foreign interests and this foreign imperialism, essentially, again, backed by the US. And I'm hoping that we will one day get Musab Baba on either Global Majority for Peace or on this show to talk a little bit more about Sudan, because there's so much more to cover. Obviously, this was just like an overview of what's actually happening there. Yeah.
So Israel is definitely involved again. It's very interesting. It would be interesting to know the role of Egypt, which is probably very hard to understand because Egypt is in fact a dictatorship by El-Sisi. So that means we'll never be able to hear Egyptian voices talking freely, unless they are on exile, and maybe not even like that. But I will try to get a guest, an exile guest from Egypt, so we can better understand what's going on. Egypt is an extremely important and relevant country. If you see, like, it's bordering with Palestine, it's bordering with Israel, it's bordering with Jordania, it's close to Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Libya. Has such a incredibly history, and they have the US ghost of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, I mean, that is why they are getting...
Ghostbusters, isn't it? They are the ghostbusters of the world. That's what it feels to me.
That is why they're getting $1.3 billion annually in military aid. Like, that is a lot. Like I said, top 3 recipients of US military aid. So, there's a reason, as you said quite rightly, they're very geopolitically strategic position. And so there's nothing, so we can't really say anything about their level of sovereignty. There isn't going to be any real sovereignty in Egypt with this type of military interference in their country. Because again, it's not just the money, right? It's equipment, but it's training, it's maintenance, it's joint military exercises, US joint military exercises with their own troops. So these are not sovereign countries or acting independent from US diktats.
Absolutely. So, very interesting. So complex,
Yeah. So there was
Yeah,
that.
you know,
Go ahead.
go ahead. I think I am delaying the internet
Oh,
here.
okay. I was just
Please.
going to say, like, that, you know, that's a very horrific story. And again, exposing these links from the core of the empire to these regions, the genocides happening around the world. You know, I like to say that genocide is a feature of imperialism, it's not a bug. And so we have to remember that it's a feature of imperialism.